Welcome to another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. With us, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro. Talking Royals baseball, and oh, what a series it was against the Seattle Mariners. Royals don't complete the sweep, but they look pretty good. In fact, they've gone 3-2 against first-place clubs, toe-to-toe with the big boys. Where is our playoff optimism meter now? Cole Ragans assuming the role of ace here over his last 4 or 5 starts. Can this be a playoff bullpen? Or do they need some work on it? We've been talking a lot about the bullpen. We'll do it again this week. Veterans rebounding from slow starts. Hunter Renfroe, Will Smith, Nick Anderson. Is it coaching? Are they trying to coach up some MJ Melendez? They're staying the course, good, bad, or otherwise. Daniel Lynch struggles, but at least battles. Sets up the ability to come back on Friday night. Bobby Witt's still hitting, and the Yankees are coming. We're talking about it all right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Rany, the Royals looked like, well, maybe they're not going to get hot, right? Maybe they're not going to be good enough to handle the biggest of the big boys as we see them, have some struggles. And, I was like, the playoff optimism meter works with me if it doesn't work with anybody else, because I immediately think, well, where am I on the playoff optimism meter? And it had me thinking, and then they split with the Guardians, and they take 2 out of 3 from the M's, and they give you a lot more confidence than maybe you had even 4 or 5 games before. Even though we were, I'm not going to even say putting on a good face. I think we were accurately describing the fact that, yes, they're having some struggles. They're not getting swept, right? The bad Royals, if the fear was that they're becoming the team that just can't get out of their own way, that it's just god-awful, that team would lose, 7 in a row. And we'd always say, well, if they could have just gone 2-5, you only lose 3 games to 500 as opposed to losing 7, right? It's like an important distinction to make. And they were doing that. And lo and behold, they turn around against 2 first-place clubs. And they take the better part of 5 games, 3 out of 2, including an incredible comeback, 3rd biggest comeback in Royals history. I got to think the excitement's going right back through the roof.
It's certainly not going down. They're in the what I would consider probably the toughest 2-week stretch of the season. They're going into what I think is clearly the toughest week of the season schedule-wise with the series against the Yankees and the Dodgers. But, they started that stretch off with 2 series against first-place teams. And you said it's not just that they're not getting swept. They're not getting blown out at all. And we've been talking about that all season. But that continues. They have lost 1 game by more than 3 runs in the last 4 weeks since May 13th. And that game, it was actually against the Padres. They were losing 5-3 in the 9th, and they gave up 2 runs in the 9th inning. They've had games where they were down 8 runs going into the 9th inning, 5 runs down and going into the 9th inning, and made it close. But this week, after the really emotional victory last Sunday that we led off our show with, they go to Cleveland. They get up 5-0 early. Bobby Witt hits 2 bombs. They have Seth Lugo on the mound, and they lose the game. And they lose the game because Bobby Witt makes, I would say a mental mistake. I mean, he took complete blame for the loss afterwards. Never mind the 2 home runs and 5 RBIs, but should have thrown to first on a routine ground ball. Tried to run to second base and get the force, and realized he wasn't going to get there in time, and then rushed to throw to first with the bases loaded, a 3-run error. That could have been a very emotionally devastating loss against your primary AL Central opponent, the first game of a series, the beginning of a very long stretch. And instead, they get the Royals get an off day on Wednesday with the rain out. And then what I think we may look back at as quietly one of the most important games of the season on Wednesday afternoon. Brady Singer coming back from, he missed the start because of illness. He was sick. He wasn't himself. He gave up 9 hits in 3 2/3 innings. The base runners were everywhere, all over the bases. They were down 3-1, bases loaded. They pull him. They bring in Will Smith, and that begins a stretch of 5 1/3 hitless innings from the bullpen. They chip away at the lead. MJ Melendez has maybe the best base running play of the year, jumping over the catcher and touching home plate to tie the game. And then, in the the 8th inning, it was 2 outs, nobody on. Adam Frazier and Kyle Isbell double and single to bring in the go ahead run, and they win a really tough game, salvage a split in Cleveland. That sets up, the game of the comeback of the year, one of the comebacks of the decade, being down 7-0 after half an inning. First team in 29 years, not Royals team, any team in 29 years to win a game where they did not score in the first inning and gave up 7 or more runs. Just an absolutely remarkable game. Then kind of a business-like win yesterday. Today they lost. Here is what had to happen for the Royals to lose today. They were down 3-1 in the 8th. All right. Down 3-1 in the 8th. Kyle Isbell gets called out on a sensational defensive play from both the second baseman and first baseman on what looked to be an infield single, close enough that they challenged it and lost. Then Michael Garcia was out on another squibber that was a tremendous defensive play by the third baseman. Then leading off the 9th inning, Vinny Pasquantino was called out on a 3-2 pitch. That was ball 4. It was a close pitch, but if we had automated balls and strikes, it would have been ball 4. And with all that, they still tied the game with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And in the 10th inning, they had the go-ahead runner at third picked off on a design play. Freddie Fermin set up like 2 feet, almost 3 feet outside. I remember thinking, what on earth is he doing? It was a design play. They threw back, but the throw hit Michael Garcia a little bit on the glove side. Again, challenged. It was close enough that it was worth challenging, but he was not called out. And then James MacArthur lost the plot, walked the number 9 hitter on after being up 0-2, gave up a go-ahead hit to Julio Rodriguez, and gave up an 0-2 hanging curveball for 2 more runs. And with all of that, the Royals had the tying run on first base in the bottom of the 10th inning with nobody out and the top of the lineup coming up. I mean, if you're the Seattle Mariners, you're looking at the Royals like, a teenager at the at summer camp looks at Mike Myers. Like, they will not die. They will not go away. And even though the Mariners escaped with 1 win, if this were a playoff game, this would be, this would eat away at us for months, years, right? But in the middle of June, it's just a reminder of just how relentless this team is. And with all, even with today's loss, 3-2 against 2 first place teams, really all they have to do is just not completely get destroyed against the Yankees and Dodgers, which is not a guarantee because these are 2 of the 3 best teams by far in the major leagues. But the way they're playing and the way they're pitching, they need to get the bullpen straightened out. But I mean, even some of the guys that we've been maligning all season long have been playing well in this stretch. You can't help but feel, ever more optimistic that this team is going to stay in the race all season long.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think these are the moments, we had, I think, Adam Dravetta, who, produces my radio show, dubbed it the Prove It Tour, when they went on their 19 games where, almost all of them were against quality teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of them were 500 or better, except for 3 games or something. And they came through above 500. And that was a big one. And I know, and like it depends on where teams are. Teams are constantly going just below or just above. And so it changes what their record is against 500 teams. But that was a popular drum to beat as they were kind of having some struggles. You're looking at going, well, they just can't beat the good teams. And so I do think this was an important run against the Guardians and Mariners to get themselves feeling like they can do it, especially going in against maybe the 2 teams that are favored to be in the World Series in their next couple of series. And, this has a chance. I'm not going to say it's going to make or break them, because I think I don't think they feel like we're King Kong, we're world beaters. The 2015 team had been to the 7th game of the World Series and were 90 feet away from tying the 7th game of the World Series. They knew they were good enough to win it all. This team still doesn't know that. They're still trying to believe it. So I don't think this series, that's coming up, and we can talk a little bit more about it when we get into some of the pitching matchups later on. But I think it is important to build confidence, and especially after the Twins had gotten you. And it's looking like the Twins might just be a bad matchup for the Royals and that they just had their number. But I think it was important to bounce back against the Guardians. I think that win against the Guardians was really important, maybe more important than people may realize. And it makes me really wish we had that 3rd game of the series. Could they have gotten that? Because they, a lot of people, we've had a number of people saying, 3-2 feels like a letdown, should have been 4-1 because of the way that first game went.
But on the other hand, if they had played that Guardians, it would have been Daniel Lynch on the mound. They pushed him back because of the rain out. So I think that game was made up for late August. I think that it'll be a better pitcher on the mound, hopefully, than Daniel Lynch, whether it's one of their starting 5 or if it's Chris Bubich. And hopefully they'll have straightened out some of the offensive issues they've got and maybe added a hitter or something. So I actually think the Royals caught a break there with not having, especially the way Lynch pitched on Friday.
Well, I think you feel like they caught a break because they came back and won his start. It
wasn't against an in-division rival. They didn't have to as much. It wasn't quite the must-win game.
That's fair. That's a fair point. By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete. They proudly serve the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been solving them, making them disappear since 1994. Accidents, that creates liability problems in your parking lot. If you own or manage a business, get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible. Let you focus on your business. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Do we want to give so often we get talking about the playoff optimism meter, give a million reasons, and then don't give the number. Do we want to give the number first?
Yes, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and give the number now. So I'm going to go up. I'm going to go up. I think it was like 6.25 last week. I'm going to be 6.5 this week. And the only reason I'm not going higher is, again, we're going into this Yankees-Dodgers stretch. If they get through this next week in solid shape, I may be approaching numbers I haven't hit all season. But 6.5 right now feels really good to me.
I'm going to go 5.5. This was a confidence builder for me. I think I was at 5 last time, wasn't I?
Yep. So
I am going to take it to 5.5 because I do think even their bad play is, again, I mentioned the grabbing the game, not getting swept. That's an important part. That's what good teams do, even when they're not at their best. It's like a pitcher that doesn't have his best stuff. No, he doesn't go out there and throw 8 shutout innings, but he gets you 6 with 3 or 4 runs and keeps you in the game. That's what they did when they weren't playing well. They stayed in the race. It wasn't a game, but it's a race. And they didn't kill themselves. And they still haven't done that. They've had that opportunity. They had a bad stretch. What was it, 2-5? What is their worst stretch been?
I think they were, was it 1-6? I think they lost 6 or 7 right before they came back against the Padres. That was kind
6
of
or 7
right there. Yeah, so they lost 3, but they have not lost 4 in a row all season, which is incredible for a team that normally loses 6 in a row in the first month of the season.
Several weeks ago when I had JJ Piccolo on the radio show, and he said, listen, we haven't really been tested yet. We're going to have a bad stretch. We're going to drop 7 in a row, and that's where we'll really be tested. And so I was all over this. 7 in a row is 6 of 7, and hopefully it doesn't ever end up being 7 in a row. But this was where they were to be tested, and they answered it. They bounced back, and especially as you pointed out, how difficult the last loss of the 6 of 7 was, to the Guardians, to be able to bounce back and, play the way they've played the last few games. And the fact that even during that 6 out of 7, so many of the games, they were wearing out the bullpen, right, of the opposition.
Yep.
And that's what, we heard Matt Quatraro point out. They were still playing quality baseball. I know Bobby Witt Jr. had a bad error that, torpedoed the one game after having a brilliant offensive game. But, they're still playing high quality baseball, and that's not going to go away. When you play high quality baseball, you don't make mistakes. You're going to be around. And so when the other team makes mistakes, they capitalize on it. Yeah, that it doesn't sound like much to go from 5 to 5.5, but it puts me to the more likely to make the playoffs than not on my scale. So that's a big one to nudge over.
Yeah. And the objective metrics, the algorithms agree with you. Right? Last week, Fangraphs had the Royals, I think, at 55% to make the playoffs. It's interesting because they were at 55 going into Friday's game. And to tell you how much you can one day can matter. The Royals came back with that incredible win on Friday, but almost every other contender in the American League, not counting like the Yankees and Orioles, who are their odds aren't really affecting the Royals right now. But everybody else lost, and so one day the Royals odds jumped almost 6%, and then yesterday it jumped from 55 to like 61% on after Friday's game. And then yesterday the Royals won again, and almost all the teams that they're chasing or chasing them lost. It was up at 66. It went up basically 10, 11% in 2 days. But then today the Royals lost, and almost every other team that is in the race won. So it dropped back down to 61.5%. But we gained about 5-6% this week. So about half a point on our optimism meter. That fits, right? The Royals are better than even odds to make the playoffs. And that is the final season projection for the Royals has them at 86 and 76, which, if you do the math, would actually mean they play under 500 the rest of the season. They're 39 and 27 right now. So even with an average projection of 47 and 49 the rest of the way, Fangraphs still gives the Royals better than 50-50 chance of make the playoffs. So that gives you an idea. Like, the Royals have banked 12 games over 500. The team, the Royals team that had the best early season start in the franchise history, the 1976 Royals, they started 38 and 19. That team, as you know, famously is the first Royals team to make the playoffs. They were being chased by the A's all season long. The A's had won the division 5 years in a row, but the Royals were able to hold on and won the division by 4 or 5 games. They clinched like, I think, 3 games left. That team, after being 38 and 19, was under 500 the rest of the season. 52 and 53, they finished. That's how important a hot start can be. And this is the second hottest start in Royals history. So they've built up, especially in a system where 12 teams make the playoffs, they've built up enough of a cushion that if they just play 500 the rest of the way, they've got a very good chance of making the playoffs. And I think you and I both believe they are probably going to play a little bit above 500 the rest of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. And, this stretch is going to be interesting. And I don't think there's, any reason to panic if it doesn't go exactly how you want it to go. Right. But I do think we are going to learn more because they are going to measure themselves against the best of the American League now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that Yankee series is big for them and what they're going to be. By the way, so yeah, how many answers have we gotten? We've asked a lot of questions. I mean, the bullpen's been one of them. Do we really think we're getting answers to the bullpen? Are we getting answers to the outfield? I see a lot of MJ Melendez conversation here. And, we are seeing some guys bounce back. I think there's a reason Hunter Renfroe is hitting the baseball more consistently. I think that's a good thing. But on the MJ Melendez, I don't know if people are like, what do you think of him now or where they were at? But today was what, 1 for 4, right, with the home run?
One for it. He was over 3 and then tied the game with 2 outs in the 9th with a dramatic home run. Here's the thing with MJ.
But let me point out, I just so people, he's 4 for his last 41. He has hit 2 home runs in the last 3 games, but he is 4 for his last 41. And one of the games he was 0 for, he had a dramatic, as you pointed out, slide to win the game, right? But he's still not hitting. Not consistently. I mean, running into one every now and then, that's great. But where are we on the MJ pessimism meter? Was somebody asked? I mean, if I find it, I threw it up there earlier, but I'm still quite pessimistic. I mean,
at this point, I'd call it the MJ exasperation meter because I'm exasperated not just with him, but with whatever the Royals are doing with him. And let's go back to you and I talking a week ago. You and I were 100% convinced the Royals were going to make a change to the roster. Some change, right? We thought Kyle Isbell would probably need some of at least a little bit of time off. And we thought for sure there's no way they could stick with MJ. Fortunately, Isbell, one of the hidden stories of this team is how unbelievably healthy they have been this year. Right? I mean, Michael Massey's the only position player to have had any kind of injury, right? We've talked about that way. They've used 14 position players. Another week, still 14 guys have been on the active roster of position players. And on the pitching side, I mean, the two guys who've been injured, Alec Marsh and Michael Wacha, were both hit by line drives, right? Both hit by pitches, or hit by pitches that were hit. Has anybody else suffered? I'm looking at everybody who's. I mean, Carlos Hernandez came back late, started the season on the injured list, but from really spring training on, I don't think that they've had a pitcher suffer a significant injury at all. So the issue has not been health. The thing with MJ, you and I were both absolutely convinced that he's broken. He needs to be fixed. It's not even about a criticism of his ability or his talent or his performance. It's just like his career is better served by going back to the minor leagues. What happened? The Royals gave him a day off, but he can't. They did not send him down. He had basically 3 days off on the bench. But when he came back, you could tell immediately his stance had changed significantly. One of the things we were talking about, one of the reasons why we thought he was broken, was the way he was holding the bat at the plate. Nothing seemed to work. He was not in a load-bearing position when the pitch was delivered, so he was moving his hands back, which slowed down his bat, and he was constantly swinging through pitches. So they at least acknowledged there was something wrong with him. They're trying to fix him. His stance was completely different. In his second game back, he hit a home run, which at the time didn't look like a big deal, but it was a 3-run home run that took an 8-1 game, made it an 8-4 game, and the Royals came back and won. And then today, after an 0-for-3, and he came with the last option, ambushed the first pitch. It just had an absolute gorgeous home run. It's a real shame the Royals lost on a day where Hunter Renfroe and MJ Melendez both homered, and they lost. So you're thinking, okay, maybe they're fixing him. But here's the thing. Those 2 home runs are the only 2 hits he had this week. He had 14 at bats. He had 2 hits. Now, they were both home runs with men on base. Like those, if you can always hit home runs with men on base for your hits,
but how many of the ones that he didn't get a hit were with men on base? I mean, like,
right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's great that he had those 2 moments, but I don't know that signifies anything other than he ran into a couple of pitches. I still am not convinced he's fixed. And you can't have a left fielder who's going out there batting 169.
Right. And that's the thing is like, somebody tried to tell me he was clutch. I'm like, clutch. They don't mind pitching to him with guys on base. Yes, like every now and then you ought to get one when they're just pounding the strike zone against you because they don't fear you at all. Like that's the issue. Look, nobody denies that he has talent, right? Nobody denies. We've seen the exit velo and all the things that point to this is a guy that if and when he connects with the baseball, it can go a long way. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't connect much, right, for all the various reasons we've talked about. So listen, where's my optimism meter? I don't know, 2, 3. Like I've never been that high on him. I'm the guy who said trade him after he had the 40 home run minor league season because you just signed Salvador Perez. And I said, it doesn't make sense. They give you traded him for an outfielder then, right? Minor leaguer for minor leaguer. A team needs a catcher. You're moving the reigning home run champ for an outfielder. I'm thinking you're going to get a good outfielder, right? If you get him. And so, and listen, I don't want to be sitting here rooting for my prediction. I hope he tears the cover off the ball. I hope he becomes, Dale Murphy, right? Like out from the dish to become an MVP outfielder. I think that'd be great. And there are skills and he's worthwhile as long as you've got him. And I think and just as big a story is that they have no one else to take him out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the hidden, last week. Right. That's the underlying subtext here, right? Is that I'm seeing the Royals try to rework his swing on the fly at the major league level. At least makes me feel, confident that the Royals see what we see. Like they're not in denial about how bad his performance is. It is more a reflection of the fact that they don't think they have any better options in Omaha, which is a real indictment of the talent they have in Omaha if they don't feel comfortable with any of those guys, including Drew Waters, who spent a lot of time in their outfield the last 2 years, can come up and be an improvement on him. But at least they are acknowledging that he can't just go out there and swing the bat. He wasn't just hitting into bad luck. He has hit into bad luck this year. Like his numbers should be better based on how hard he hits the ball and the launch
Wasn't that
angles,
the case last year too? Isn't that
It
what
was
we
the
heard?
case last year.
I mean, it's like I remember Jason Stark telling me once about Danny Duffy, and I was going through some of the analytics. He's like, listen, some guys just induce funky contact, right? And I think it was Duffy he was talking about. And, he said he just seems to do it. And because, didn't Duffy have a stretch where he didn't give up any homers or something? And I can't remember. And so maybe it was during that stretch, and he was talking about it. And I'm with you, and I see you scouring. I know you're scouring a site right now, grinding through numbers.
I'm just looking up what his expected offensive numbers are for this year.
But some guys, that's just what they are, right? Like, I understand batting average on balls in play. If it's ridiculously low, you're due for some good luck, right? You're just hitting into bad luck. And if it's way high, hey, guess what? A market correction is coming around. But there are guys, as we talked about, Ariza gives up power. He swings slower to make sure he puts contact on it. So his batting average on balls in play is always going to be a little bit high because that's what he's tailored his swing to. Melendez is almost like the guy who closes his eye and swings as hard as he can. Well, if he runs into it, it's going to go somewhere.
And that does sometimes happen, but he's not hitting it often enough. And that's the thing. It's not just the quality of contact. It's also the frequency with which he's making contact. He's missing on so many pitches. And I think my hope is, look, if the Royals are basically saying he starting June 6th, when he came back out with a new batting stance, we're starting over with him. Forget that. Throw out the numbers before June 6th. Okay, right now he's 2 for 14, but they're 2 home runs. He has 2 walks. Like, you can work with that. His, base running value. It's actually really funny because he has the value he has provided this year has been on base running and defense, right? He has gone from one of the worst defensive outfielders, not just catchers, but outfielders in the game last year, to basically a league average left fielder this year, which, okay, that doesn't make him an asset necessarily, but you can't just crap on that kind of improvement. Like, he at least is not a liability anywhere except in the batter's box, right? He may not be an asset on defense, but he's not a liability. He is a well above average base runner, surprisingly enough. Like, they got him out from behind the dish before he lost his speed, and he has a decent amount of speed. He's actually a fairly intelligent base runner. He's gotten a lot of attention for the fact he's always running out every ground ball. Like, the effort has been there. I'm not denying that. I just think that the swing has been messed up. So now they're saying, okay, we're trying to fix the swing. And I'm skeptical that they can pull this off, but I'm less skeptical than I would be given how many other guys on this roster, veterans, that you and I've justifiably criticized this, during the season and even before the season in the case of Hunter Renfroe, who have quietly been improving as the season goes along, fixing what has ailed them. I mean, Hunter Renfroe, I think, has gotten the most attention because he's been on kind of a hot stretch. I mean, not even counting today, in his previous 18 games, he was hitting 293 with an 886 OPS. Like, Hunter Renfroe was peak Hunter Renfroe for the last 3 weeks. Then he went today and he homered in the 10th inning. He had 2 hits. His overall season numbers, and tradition still dictates you count the whole season. His overall season numbers are still bad, but a 641 OPS is bad. It's not terrible. All right, so he has been better. They have, and I'll give a lot of credit to Quatraro in his particular circumstance because he is spotting him very well. He's not starting every day. They're playing him 50, 60% of the time. They're using him against most left-handers, but I think they're trying to figure out what matchups work best for him and using him in spots where he can do the most damage. That's the Rays way. That's smart baseball. Use your entire team, hide your players against, matchups that are bad for them and use them in matchups that are good for them. But very quietly, there's 2 guys I want to talk about in the bullpen that have, been much maligned, and to the point where I think we were very slow to recognize that they've been getting better. Will Smith was the closer when the season began, right? And it was from his first inning, there were alarm bells going off because his velocity was way off from last year. This is a guy who's historically thrown 92, 93, which as a lefty was fine. He was throwing 90, and he was getting lit up. He cost a game against the Orioles early in the season. The Royals had a 1-run lead in the bottom of the ninth, and he blew that game. He went out a couple days later, gave up 4 runs in an inning. So in his first 8 outings, he had 11 runs in 7 innings. He had a 14.14 ERA. And at that point, I thought he was going to go on the injured list and come up with a phantom injury, because it wasn't just he was getting bad results. His velocity was gone, right? They didn't. They kept using him. They put him in low leverage spots. But what was really interesting was his pitch mix completely changed. He basically stopped throwing fastballs because he didn't have a fastball. All he was throwing was breaking stuff. He'd go out there and just throw slop. And, had, I think, 8 or 9 consecutive scoreless outings in a row. He wasn't striking out anybody, so I didn't really believe in it as something, anything more than just a kind of a lucky stretch. But he's been starting to get some whiffs lately. And here's what's really interesting. He went out yesterday. So he went out, I think it was 3 days ago. He threw 19 pitches. 14 of them were sliders. That's what he's been doing all year long. Since he was demoted out of the closer spot, just throwing breaking balls. But his fastball was starting to tick up a little bit. Yesterday he went out. He threw, I think, 5 fastballs in the inning that he threw. 3 of them were over 93 miles an hour. That's about as hard as he's thrown all season long. If you look at his velocity graph for the year, it is aligned. It starts at 90 in early April, goes to 91, and now he's thrown consistently now 92, 93. He went out today, got one batter in the 10th inning after MacArthur had blown the game, and he only threw 1 fastball. It was 92 and a half, but that's interesting because he was pitching on back-to-back days. So even with no rest, his fastball is 2 miles an hour faster than it was in April. The results have quietly been there since mid-April. He's given up 2 runs in 14 innings now. But whatever was the issue, they fixed it, or he fixed it. But the point is, he is throwing harder than he was 6 weeks ago. The Royals never gave up on him, even when I thought maybe they should, or at least put him on the IL and try to figure things out. He worked through it. That's one guy. Nick Anderson was a guy we really liked that they picked, they traded for from the Braves. He's a guy who's always had trouble staying healthy, but was always effective when he was on the mound. That's why I like him. Like, if he's not healthy, he won't pitch. He won't hurt you. And if he is healthy, he'll help you. But he was quietly pretty terrible up until the last week or so. But he had until a week ago, I think he had 12 walks and 12 strikeouts on the season. You can't survive like that. And like Will Smith, Anderson's velocity was quietly way down from last year. He was a guy who consistently threw around 95, even touching 96. His average fastball last year was between 94 and a half, 95. In April this year, he was down around 93. Still, harder than Will Smith, but he's a right-hander. The point is his velocity was down about 2 miles an hour from last year. And I don't know if you saw him this week. He's been consistently 95 to 96 in his last 3 outings now. And after having, as many walks as strikeouts almost up until this week, looking up his last 3 outings here, he went out and had a scoreless. So on June 4th, he faced 3 batters, struck out 2 of them. And then Friday, he threw a scoreless inning. He got the win in the ninth when the Royals came back. Scoreless outing, faced 3 batters, struck out 2 of them. And then today he went out there, gave up a hit, but strike out, no walks in an inning. Suddenly, Nick Anderson might be, who had been really the guy people were demanding be demoted to the minor leagues. He was one of those guys at the back end of the bullpen who was not pitching well, is suddenly an asset again. So even though James MacArthur is struggling now, you're seeing guys who are veterans, who are older, who came out of the chute not pitching well, and the Royals have fixed them during the season. This is as an analyst, this is something new for me because I'm used to analyzing players based on what their performance has been and extrapolating that to the future. And that's how I've made my living for the last 30 years, is basically predicting that players who have been bad will be bad and players who have been good will be good. Right? Wait
a minute, don't give away all your secrets.
I mean, you would think the way people reacted to that, you would think it was a secret. It's this guy was not a good player, or his minor league numbers suggest he's not a good player. He won't be a good player. We have moved into an era in baseball over the last 5-10 years. It makes analysis difficult because Players change now, and that part of it we don't see until we only see the results. We don't actually see, the improvements they're making until they manifest on the field. But the Royals were a team that were kind of immune to this sort of, taking a player who's an established veteran, a guy who's an established performance level, and changing it. And so some of the, I'm finding I have to be much more careful about saying this guy sucks, this guy's good, because if you say guy sucks, and the Royals now are saying, no, we think we can fix this guy and he won't suck next week. It's, I have a lot less confidence about my analysis, but I have a lot more confidence about what the Royals are doing. I mean, ultimately what I'm saying is the Royals have really good coaching right now. That's not something I'm used to saying. Not just Quatraro, I think is great, but the way they teach hitting, the way they teach pitching, the way they teach defense, obviously with Jose Aguasil in the infield, like they have as solid a group of coaches right now as I think they've maybe ever had, at least since I've been following.
Yeah, no, and we've talked about a lot of the Rays, of coaches who coach coaches, right? That's one of the things Jeff Passan said to me when the Royals hired Matt Quatraro about what their approach is, that it would be about having high quality coaches, and they have that. They've done it. And I go back to something Buddy Bell. I've told the story many times, so I'll make it quick for those that have heard it. But he said, when he got into coaching, he said, he was done playing, and now the low levels of the minors are like, hey, we want you to work with this kid. We think he's the up and coming third baseman. Buddy worked with him for a day and came back to him and said, yeah, guy sucks. You need to get somebody else. Like, no, he's the guy. He's like, no, he's not the guy. He sucks. You got to get somebody else. Like, we're not getting anybody else. We'll get a different coach if we need to. And, it was a different time. Buddy Bell, even though he had 2,000 career hits and 4 or 5 all-star games, needed a gig. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, and I realized I got to go back and find a way to get this guy over the hump. He goes, that's coaching. That's what it is. It's not like, oh, here it is. It's easy. Do it like I do it. And it immediately works. It's when it doesn't work. And the Royals seem to have a great group, and the Rays have always had a great group of guys that understand, okay, we got to try something different and something different and something different. There does have to be someone, and that someone is JJ Picola, that says, we're wasting our time. We've got to move forward. But you just illustrated beautifully that with Anderson and Smith and Renfroe, they're getting back on track. And
it, like you said, they probably didn't work at first, and it probably didn't work at second. Like it wasn't an overnight thing, right? It was gradual. And that's the thing with that MJ. It's like you and I both believe he has the ability. Like we would not be shocked if he turned into a productive major league hitter, right? He has been for extended stretches in his career. He has been. He has also been unbelievably awful and, again, exasperating. Neither you nor I know if they can pull this off, right? I don't know if they know for sure. One of the big decisions they have to make, it's an ongoing, it's not today or tomorrow, like it's every day they're making the decision. Is MJ a guy we still believe in? They have made it very clear they still, to this point, they still do. And he keeps showing us just enough to think maybe they are right. But it's far from confirmed. And in the meantime, he has hurt the team with his performance this year, and it hasn't kept them from playing as well as they have. But they have got to either fix it or find somebody else who can.
I think this is an interesting question from Cotman. By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses, solving parking lot problems for 30 years. You can find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. I do. Cotman's on some. As for coaching, do you think players notice this and it might be an advantage in free agency? Yes. Every player I've ever talked to, and it's probably, I've had more conversations about the football side, but what they want from a coach is to make them better. Like they will run through fire if you can make them better. And that reputation gets around. Absolutely. And the Royals seem like they're, at least based upon what they did this last offseason, that maybe their ownership is willing to spend more than, say, the Rays, who also have a great group of coaches. Yes, I think it absolutely can help them, all things being equal, get a guy for half of what he's going to go to someplace else. No, but like you're in a a bidding war and it could go either way, yeah, I think it'll be a bonus. And I think absolutely everybody around the league, every player around the league takes notice when you can, when guys are getting better in a Royals uniform. I think that's giant, a big picture all the way around now and in the future.
Absolutely. There's no question that players place a huge premium on an organization that they feel can make them better. And the Rays are a classic example of this because you don't hear like players who go get traded to Tampa or Tampa picks them up off of waivers or whatever are usually thrilled to be there. Which is, think about the fact it's not just that they don't pay a lot of money, but like, have you seen the ballpark they play in? Like the facility, they're not playing in a 21st century state of the art, stadium either, right? Like the amenities, everything about playing for Tampa Bay, even the crowds aren't that great, but players are still excited to be there because they know the Rays are going to bring the best version of themselves out, right? But what's different is that the Royals are suddenly putting themselves in that group of teams that players are looking at as the Royals can make them better. As recently as 2 years ago, and we don't have to talk about all the different people who were 2 years ago, but certainly the pitching coach, that wasn't the case, right? I think this winter, what Cole Ragans himself did last year, I have no doubt that caught the attention of a lot of people in the sport. You don't go from quadruple A to maybe the best start in the American League 2 weeks after you join the Royals organization without getting a lot of people saying, something's different going on in Kansas City, especially when the Royals have brought in Quatraro and Brian Sweeney and Bove and all these people, right? So did that have some impact on Seth Lugo being willing to sign with the Royals and Michael Wacha being willing to sign? Maybe. And I think what we're seeing this year, success breeds success. Like I've talked about this for years on this show. I see no reason why the Royals can't be the Cardinals of the American League. A year like this goes a long way towards establishing a reputation for the Royals as that kind, a team that can bring out the best version of yourselves, that plays in a rabid baseball market, but that maybe doesn't have the pressure of a New York or an LA, right? Like there are some inherent geographical advantages to playing for the Kansas City Royals. People always talk about, well, the market's too small, you can't compete. No. They're playing against the Guardians, the Tigers, the Twins, the White Sox in a market where people love the game. Bobby Witt's turning into a folk hero before our eyes, right? And if you throw on top of that the Royals are getting a reputation as an organization that actually knows what it's doing with developing players, or not just developing players, but taking veterans like we're talking about, established major league players and making them better, there's a potential here for this to become a huge organizational asset. I don't want to jump too far ahead of ourselves. It's been half a season of this. But I just think the Royals' reputation in the sport is in a significantly better position than it was 1 year ago today.
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think everybody's taking notice, and I talked about just Matt Quatraro. I said, Jeff, are people talking about like why didn't we hire that guy? He said, yes, they are. Mm-hmm. That is one of the things that a lot of teams are going like, why didn't we go get this guy? I can't express how impressed I am with Matt Quatraro, who is just as even keeled and steady as it gets, and has stood watch on this whole overhaul. And it took a long time for them to put together. It took a long time for them to finally land on Quatraro, right? My memory is they
did. I remember we had quite a few interviews. Like we were, at least you and I were waiting. We thought they would have hired somebody 2 or 3 weeks earlier in the manager search. Like they cleaned house immediately, right? Like got off the plane and they needed a new manager and new pitching coach. But then the process of actually filling that spot, that took longer than you and I expected. I'm going to share a little story here, if that's all right.
Yeah.
This is it's not off the
music, some like
let's put on some romantic mood music. No, so this March we had a baseball prospectus event in Arizona, where me and the other 4 original founders, we spoke at a SABR convention. And it was a really nice time, but the best part for me was just like a reunion with some of the guys that I started Baseball Prospectus with 30 years ago. And afterwards we went out for like a dinner with a lot of people who were part of Baseball Prospectus in the early years. And we're talking, Nate Silver flew in from New York, which it was great. I hadn't seen him in 15 years. Like, it was a really just a lovely dinner, wonderful event to just catch up with guys. And the one other guy who came was James Click, who is our shining star in the sport. Obviously, was general manager of the Houston Astros, when they won a world championship, but was also with the Rays for a long time. And he, we're just sitting around talking baseball at dinner, as a bunch of just baseball nerds would do. We weren't talking about the Royals, but I'm there, obviously. So, I think people know that, I'm going to be interested in Royals talk. So we just happened to be talking, and just kind of almost out of the blue, James just turned to me and he's like, I just want to say to you, Matt Quatraro, that guy is the real deal. Just, it struck me because he didn't have to blow smoke or anything like that. He just completely unprompted. He just made that statement that and this is a guy who has tremendous credibility, obviously with BP, but also in the sport, and just said, I absolutely adore Matt Quatraro. I think he's going to be great. And this is in spring training, when the only data point you and I had was that the Royals had lost 106 games last year.
Right.
But they were on pace to lose about 115, and they played close to 500 ball in August and September and finished really strong. So I thought that was it was a really nice thing for him to say, but also just it struck me because he didn't have to say anything. And what we're seeing from Quatraro, I've said this, tactically, I think he's as strong a manager as I've seen in 30 years. And he has such at least when we see him in the press conference, he's such a calming presence. Like, you almost worry, you and I would, because we don't see it. Like, can he have the red ass if he needs it? Like, can he get on the players? But obviously, the way the players perform, clearly, he can dial up the intensity if he needs to. But he never, at least publicly, never loses his cool. He's, very analytic, but not in a way that obviously alienates the players. You'll sometimes have managers. There have been managers who've gotten the job because of their quote unquote analytics background, but just don't have the people skills to attract the respect of the players necessary to keep their respect over the course of a season. And Quatraro seems to have the full package. Like, yeah. I'm really. There are a lot of people who I think have raised their reputation, obviously, this season, but Q is at the very top of the list for me. I mean, I think he's just been fantastic.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's a tremendous compliment. And I wasn't sure what to think of him the first time spring training. I'm like, ooh, he's kind of a different cat, Like, of course, I'd had Ned Yost for a while, so I hadn't, and Ned, would command a room. I mean, he walked in and took control of it, and you're like, okay, well, that guy's in charge, right? Matt Quatraro, you don't walk in and go, that guy's in charge. It'd take you a little bit in the Royals clubhouse to figure out who was the manager, right? Like it wasn't.
Exactly. He seems a little more low key, which, you could worry just without seeing results that does this guy command a clubhouse? Because that's absolutely, Ned Yost commanded a club. That was his greatest skill. And Matt just seems a lot more low, not low energy, but just not as in your face about it. But the results are the result. That's the one thing that you and I don't really see. The players seem to love him, but they're performing. And it's not just the fact that he didn't lose the clubhouse last season. It's obviously the way that these guys fight at the end of every single game. Like, if they didn't have the respect of their manager, I don't think you would see a team that just absolutely does not give up.
Yeah, a couple of things here real quick. I mean, Ethan said, what was Matheny like? Matheny was a good guy, and Matheny commanded the room more than Matt Quatraro does. We'll get to that one here in a second. But, the problems, I still think Mike Matheny could be an effective manager, but the Dayton Moore thing had gone awry. I mean, we ultimately saw that. And so it was headed in a direction that nobody was going to save. So he took a bad gig. And I'm not so sure that Mike Matheny wasn't looking for just a couple more years paychecks to then call it quits. That I don't know how much his heart was really in it. Had it gone great, I'm sure he would have stuck around. But if this comment right here, great guy, but a little bit of a wimp, I'll rephrase it there. If that's not what I'm getting at with Matt Quatraro. That's not it. You don't have to be the loudest guy in the room to be respected. Terry Francona, you walk into the Guardians clubhouse, which I have when he was the manager. You don't know that Terry Francona is the boss.
That's a
right?
really good comp. I really like that comp.
Well, and that's his mentor. That's Matt Quatraro's mentor.
Right.
And I do see a lot of it.
You're right.
But you walk into Terry, even sitting in Terry Francona's office, you're like, is this the guy that's was he cleaning up before the manager comes in here and sits down at the desk? He does his press conferences from his office on the road. But as soon as he starts talking, like he knows what he's talking about, like immediately. And I got a chance to talk to Terry Francona at the spring training. They bring all the managers and general managers together. And I just sat and quizzed him forever. I mean, I just stood at his table for almost the whole 30 minutes or maybe, I don't know if it's 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever. And I just, somebody else would ask questions for a while, then I'd hit him with 3 or 4 more, and then somebody else. And you see, when you listen to the man answer questions, okay, there's the leadership. Like you can lead without, if anybody's seen Band of Brothers, right? Like, and I know this is stay with me here. And I always forget the guy's name, the red-haired guy that went on to be in Billions and, great actor, but he's the real leader in that. And he's not the rah-rah yell at everybody. He leads by example, and that's Matt Quatraro. And, that's why I go back to what players say. If a coach or a manager will put you in a position to succeed, right? That's a lot of it with Andy Reid. He draws up these plays that allows you to get wide open and you're a star. Matt Quatraro gives you the numbers of what to look for on a pitch and brings coaches in that helps guys succeed. Damian Lewis, thank you, Cotman. Damian Lewis is the actor I was talking about. He's not a loud guy, but he was clearly the leader when you watch it. In a military environment, he could lead without just screaming and yelling and all that kind of stuff. That's Matt Quatraro. So, no, he's not a wimp. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I think you can be a quality human being and tough, and I think you can be a leader without screaming at everybody. You got to be smarter than everybody. Matt Quatraro is. He's the smartest guy in the room, and he deserves a lot of credit for why they played this way. I mean, it's remarkable, and he gives you, he just shows how different it can be. I want to touch on Cole Ragans real quick because he is back, lights out again.
I don't know if he was ever gone in the first place, but yes, to whatever degree he was, he's been even better the last 5 starts or so.
He had 1 2/3 where he gave up 7 against Baltimore back on April 20th, and then he gave up 7 over 6 1/3 against the Angels on May 11th. But since then, 7 innings, none earned. 6 innings, none earned. 5 innings, 2 earned. 6 innings, 1 earned. 6 innings, 1 earned. And mowing guys down with the strikeout as well. It does look like what we saw at the end of last year is the real guy. There'll be stretches where he's off here or there. But they do truly have an ace. I mean, are we far enough along? We're almost a year. Not quite there. We're another month away from being a year of high-level starting pitching. I mean, Seth Lugo's been great. We expect a regression. We saw a little bit of a regression. But Cole Ragans does not look like he's going to regress. And that's a reason to be bullish and to keep your playoff optimism meter up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the list of reasons why the Royals are where they are right now, the fact that Cole Ragans is basically been every bit the pitcher he was last year, maybe even better, but certainly no worse. It was the fan in you looks at what Cole Ragans did last year. It's like, oh, if he just does that again, he's going to be great. Yeah, but he was the best pitcher in the American League for 2 months. And he had never done anything like that in his life before, right? Like, it's natural to expect regression. Like, right. He just wouldn't be able to take the ball every 5th day. Like, he'd also, the guys had, some major elbow issues, had a Tommy John that failed, had to have a second Tommy John. Like, there are many different ways this could have gone wrong through no fault of his own, right? He could have just been a very solid pitcher, a Brady Singer type, and he still would have been a great trade. But last year, with the Royals, 72 innings, he gave up, 50 hits, 27 walks, 89 strikeouts. Coming into today, this year, 73 innings, 63 hits, 24 walks, 89 strikeouts. Same number of strikeouts, a couple fewer walks, a few more hits. And the big thing is he gave up 3 homers in 72 innings last year, 3 homers in 73 innings this year. Today, he did give up the leadoff shot to J.P. Crawford. That's 7 home runs he's allowed in 150 innings. that is such a low ratio that I don't think that's sustainable, only because no pitcher in 2024 baseball can get away giving up a home run every 20, 22 innings. That's absurd. But he has shown absolutely no degradation from last year. In fact, his FIP, which, his ERA is a little bit higher. It's 3.08, I think this year. It was 2.64 last year. His FIP is lower. His FIP coming into today is 2.26. Like, right, your FIP is what your ERA is a very basic but effective indicator of what your ERA should be. 2.26. Nobody's ERA, no starting pitcher's ERA should be that low. It may have gone up a little bit today just because of the home run he gave up, but he also struck out 9 guys in 6 innings. Like Cole Ragans, I was saying this even a few starts ago. I still, in a must-win game, I still think I would have taken him over Seth Lugo. And that's no knock against Lugo. I think, given the way Cole's pitched in his last 5 starts, he's given up 4 runs in 30 innings, I believe. He's got a 1.20 ERA in his last 5 starts. And the way Lugo pitched his last start, I mean, if gun to my head, I would rather have Cole Ragans out there. But the Royals essentially have 2 aces. They have 2 of the 10 best pitchers, maybe 2 of the 6 or 7 best pitchers in the American League. That is, I mean, it's not just huge for, obviously, the regular season. But when we start dreaming about what the Royals can do in the playoffs, man, you could do a lot worse to build a playoff roster around than 2 elite starting pitchers. Like, I know we got some issues in the bullpen. They got some time to figure that out. But having 2 guys to start every playoff series with of that caliber, especially, I mean, it's a shame in a way that Cole Ragans won't pitch against the Yankees, because if ever somebody had the DNA of a Yankee killer, it's a power throwing left-hander. So it's kind of a shame. But on the other hand, maybe I don't want the Yankees to see him until the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like let's see him at Yankee Stadium in a must-win game in October. I mean, as much fun as 2014 and 2015 were, we didn't face the Yankees then. Like, I just the idea that we could face the Yankees in a playoff series. I was 5 years old the last time that happened. I don't remember it at all. So I've been waiting my whole lifetime for a matchup like that. And oh man, would I love to have Cole Ragans on the mound for that.
He has 98 strikeouts in 79 innings. People are talking about whether or not he can get to the 244 that Dennis Leonard had. That
was my wild prediction.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll get there, but it's going to be close.
Yeah, he's on pace for 240, 241 right now.
Oh boy.
Let me just say this: I hope he doesn't. I hope they find a place to skip him. That they get comfortable enough at some point. God forbid the Guardians fall off and you'd be able to get a bit of a cushion, just because here are the innings totals for him. 40, 90s in his big league career. 40, 96, 95, 73. There are minor league innings last year as well to add on to that, because he was down for a little bit. But, I'm just not sure how far he can go, this year, particularly if you're going to say, okay, now let's throw in the postseason as well. Yeah. So that's the only thing.
This is something they're going to have to manage. And, this is what we've talked about Chris Bubich coming back, and hopefully when Walker gets healthy, like, do they give these guys? I don't like 6-man rotations, but I love the idea of giving them just a week or 2, go on the aisle for 15 days, rest up, especially if the Royals have a cushion. I mean, right now the Royals have at least a 6-game cushion on a playoff spot, which is wild. Like, we talk about like the division, but when we're just talking about a playoff spot, the Royals right now, they're 39 and 27, and the last wild card spot, the Red Sox are at 500. They're the 7th place team, so the Royals are 6 full games up on a playoff spot. So I hope if that cushion maintains itself, they need to take advantage of that by resting guys. Bobby Witt hasn't had a day off yet, and Bobby Witt's amazing, but even he might benefit from a day or 2 off in August and September if the Royals can afford it, just to keep him healthy, and not just healthy, 100% for the playoffs. So, I think that that's the reason why I don't think Cole Ragans will get there with the strikeouts. It's just because I think he's probably going to miss a couple starts, but hopefully it'll be on their terms and not on an injury.
And by the way, Chris Bubich went today for Omaha, 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, only 1 strikeout. He did get the loss, but the ERA now at 1.42, went 64 pitches. So pretty efficient in getting through 5 innings. So he could be, part of the depth and help them get.
And the question, is he a starter? Is he? We talk about some of the bullpen issues with just not having an elite, reliever in there. The thing that I keep coming back to is, what a team's bullpen looks like in October is sometimes very different than what it was about July and August. That great comment there. Who was that? Tyler? I love that comment. Yes. Remember when Rany suggested that Marsh could have taken Lyle's innings last year and Petro was incredulous? No, I don't remember that. Do you remember that, Soren?
I do. I do. And I'm glad we moved on.
Also, I mean, I do want. I mean, since we brought up his name, I just want to say we don't talk about it, but Jordan Lyles has been away from the team now for 7.5 weeks, and we don't know why. But I cannot think of a reason why a pitcher would be away from a team for this long. That is a good reason. So I just hope whatever it is everyone's in good health, and that I just wish the best for him and his family, because we haven't talked about him in a long time, but you don't see this kind of prolonged absence from a team very often, and I just hope that it's not something that is going to be a long-term problem for him.
We do need to ask, Tyler, is this the pride of Coastal Carolina? I think that's where Tyler Thigpen went. The Tyler Thigpen that quarterbacked the Kansas City Chiefs. If it is,
caught a touchdown pass, if I recall, on a Wildcat play. Back when that constituted the highlight of the Chiefs season.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to find Tyler. Reveal yourself. It'd be nice to know.
Just to complete the thought, I was going to say, but Chris Bubich could be that guy in the bullpen. Like, even if he's not in the rotation, maybe he's your bullpen weapon come September, October. Like,
that's why I brought up just the 1K today.
Right.
In 5 innings, but very efficient in getting it done. All right, real quick, then we'll get out of here. Yankee series, what do you expect?
I mean, I worry in that every time you think the Royals, 30 years now, every time the Royals look like they're trying to establish themselves as a decent team, they run into the Yankees, and they just had terrible history. When I say history, I don't mean the playoff series. I mean the last 30 years, their winning percentage against the Yankees might be under 300 over the last 3 decades. Like, it's just really, really bad. So there's a part of me that just assumes the worst, but the starters they're getting, like Garrett Cole is on the IL. Part of it is, I mean, the Yankees are on pace to win like 110 games. I guess credit to them and their coaching staff, because when Garrett Cole went out in spring training, you thought, oh, this is going to be a real big blow for them. League with a bunch of guys, Carlos Rodon coming off a terrible year. He's back. The Royals will see him tomorrow. Marcus Stroman has been a good pitcher, but he's been not a great pitcher. He's in his early 30s. He was a guy I thought could collapse. He's been very good. And then, out of the blue, Luis Gil. Who is this guy? 26 years old, throwing like 30 innings in his major league career, and might win Rookie of the Year, right? So there is a part of me that looks at that Yankees rotation and still like, they can't be this good. Nobody is this good. The Royals are getting, they get Rodon, they get Stroman. I don't even think they're getting Gil. They're getting somebody named Cody Poteet on Wednesday, who is 29 years old and had only pitched for the Marlins in 2 partial seasons before this year. So naturally has a 1.72 ERA, right? But like, maybe we can beat him. And then Nestor Cortez in the finale. I mean, I would be happy with a split. Like, it's a 4-game series. So I think a split is reasonable. Anything other than being swept is, not a disaster, but I think it'll say a lot about this Royals team, because they still have Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. That might be the best right-left combination in Major League history, those two guys, in terms of there's never been a team that has had a right-handed and a left-handed hitter who finished the year 1-2 in OPS. And that's what Aaron Judge and Juan Soto are doing now. Now, Soto may miss. They're hoping he'll be back tomorrow. He's had a sore arm, so that would also be a big help if he misses a couple of games. But that offense, honestly, that 1-2 combination worries me more than their pitching staff. So I'm hoping for a split. If they win the series, man, then let's just start printing those playoff tickets, I guess.
Yeah, that's where we'll be, no doubt. Listen, if you need any help with the parking lot, GAN Asphalt and Concrete, they're your folks. Been doing it in Kansas City for more than 30 years, nationally recognized. Full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they're not a problem. If you know GAN, call them today at 816-484-3338. Seal coating, get it done. Weather's nice now, but all of a sudden, know what happens? They start getting everybody calling when it gets to be September, October. Oh, my God, weather's getting too cold to get it done. Get in front of that line. Call GAN today. Call 816-484-3338. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.